All right, so guys, welcome to week 7. So week 7, we're going to be talking about language and organization of your guys' speeches. And this is going to connect extremely well with how we are going to talk about your informative and persuasive speeches, okay? And those are going to be your final 2 speeches. That's it, only 2 more, and you guys are done. However, these 2 are going to be extremely vital when we're talking about how to speak to inform and how to persuade, okay? And those are 2 other concepts that we're going to go over later in other weeks. But for today, we're going to be talking about language, okay? So language is going to be a 3-parter. It's going to be a little bit long this week. I'm going to try to keep it within like 5 to 6 videos for you guys that will have multiple questions within all of them. But because of the amount of material that I want you guys to know and you want you guys to be able to apply to your informative and persuasive speeches, this one language is going to start off with 3 videos for sure, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you guys and we're gonna get started. And yeah, all right, so here we go. All right, guys, so here we go. We're gonna start right now. And just give me a quick second to. All right. Okay, so you guys should be able to see everything right now. And let's begin. So language, how and when to use it, right? And so as you guys can see, this week is Pokemon. We're doing Pokemon this week. So anyways, all right. So language. All right, so our learning objectives for this week for language specifically is that you're going to be able to identify the use of language within your speeches, right? You're going to be able to implement best practices for the use of language. All right, so this means that we're going to figure out like the particular words that you're going to be using for your informative and persuasive speeches and why you're going to be using those words. And then lastly, you're going to be able to critically analyze the use of language within your speech and your peer speeches. And this is going to be more critically analyzed within your peer evaluations within the informative and persuasive speeches. So I'm going to pay a lot more attention to those peer evaluations as we keep going on, okay? So like I said, the final 2 speeches are going to be most important. All right, so if you did not already, and I'm sure that we have a couple that might not have, but if you have not already, there is a class activity that we did during lecture, and if you missed it, that's all right, don't worry about it. It's called a language word cloud. And so if you did miss this, email me, and then we can figure out a class activity that will work, that has the same impact for you guys. But if you did do this, don't worry about this. This is just for the folks that didn't make it to lecture, okay? All right, so let's begin. All right, so what is language, right? So we all kind of have this like idea of what language could be or what language is, but we really want to know like the nitty-gritty of like what actually is language, all right? And so language doesn't necessarily have a definition in your book, but I did get language from Google, and Google defines language as the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a constructive or a conventional way. And so what we have to kind of figure out is like, okay, that sounds like a really great definition, right? But what does it mean, right? So what does that mean? That should be the question that you guys have rambling in your head right now. And like I said, what does that mean? How does that relate to you in your speeches? Like, what does that mean? And so really what we're going to do, we're going to break down the two aspects of this definition, that being constructive and conventional way of speech, or way of language, right? Way of speech. And okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to do that right now. And so that comes into, what does that definition even mean, right? As we said before. And so when we talk about constructive and conventional languages, like I said, we're going to take those into 2 different categories, right? And those are 2 very different things. And so first, when we think about something that is being a constructive or a constructed form of speech or language, we want to think about that as more of a formal and a systematic way of language, right? So it's very like top down, right? Like very formal, like you speak very very much in formalities. Like if you were going to be speaking to me, it's like, oh, Professor Burrell, or like, oh, like, I'm so sorry, but may I ask you this thing, instead of being like, oh, hey, Shane, like I have to ask you something, right? That'd be a very formal, very systematic way of speaking. That's also kind of known as a denotative meaning. And what denotative means, as it's defined in your book, is the literal dictionary meaning of a word or phrase. So by taking like a literal meaning to it, right? So a good way would be to like say, oh man, dude, chill, right? So like that's an informal way of saying to like just relax, right? But if you were taking a denotative context on that word, chill, it would literally mean to freeze, right? To freeze solid, to reduce your temperature down to 32 degrees below. It says to chill, to freeze, right? So when we're speaking of denotative languages, like we really only use a denotative language if we're speaking in formalities, or if we're speaking in a systematic way of speech, right? Or a systematic way of the use of language. A lot of this can be seen in your papers that you write for like an English class, or like a biology class or something like that. They take the literal definitions. They want to know exactly what you are saying. And so the other way to kind of look at the way of language is to, secondly, look at the conventional language, right? The way that we speak in an informal way to language. This is also known as a connotative meaning. So informal language, that's the way that I teach, right? So the way that I teach is a very conventional way of language. I don't teach in a formality, because if I speak about like these huge terms that you guys don't really know because you're not comm majors, you don't understand communication terms and lingo and theory and all of that, what's the point, right? You're not going to learn. That's why I don't use formal language with you guys, because there are studies that show that using a common language, a very informal language, is the best way for every student to learn. And so I use connotative meanings within my class. And so a connotative meaning, it's defined in your book as well, is the meaning suggested by the associations or emotional triggers of a word or a phrase, right? So like in this GIF right here with Rachel McAdams, she's saying, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not gonna happen, right? So like we know the word fetch, and you guys probably might not know this. This is from Mean Girls, but you might, I don't know. This movie is a little bit older than I am, so, but in any case, the word fetch that she was using was like, oh, that's so cool, but she was trying to make fetch work. And then like Regina George comes at her and was like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. And so that would be a connotative way of like saying like, it's not working. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be trendy or anything like that. So so when we think about language, we want to think about it in these two constructs, right? We want to think about it in the construct of like having it a structured language, which is a very formal, systematic way of speaking, A plus B equals C. And then we have a conventional language, which is A plus B, yeah, it might equal C, but more than likely it equals Z, as in zebra or zebra. And we need to take it from that context, right? So we look at it from the literal meaning of a word, or the literal meaning of that use of language, or the connotative, the informal way, the very relaxed, very like, you know, way of association, instead of a way of like, they exactly meant this. So when we think of language, and especially when we're going into our speeches in an informal and persuasive, we want to take into mind that the use of language that we use will have an impact on our speeches as we go forward, okay? So I'm gonna stop the share there. You guys should have already answered the questions that I had posed. I'm not gonna put a discussion post on this one because we have so much to get through. I don't want you guys writing forever. So we're gonna just stop it here, end it right now. And then I'm gonna see you guys in the next micro lecture when we're going to be going over, let me double check. We're going to be going over the use of word choices. Okay, so we're gonna go over that, and then I'll see you there. All right, guys, I'll put up another Pokemon. No worries. This is Vaporeon, so hope you guys enjoy.